Howdy, wild things. Ranger Bucky here with you for an episode of Wildlife Watch. In this show, I'll talk to you about some of the critters that are active during this time of the year. So here we go for January 2023. Believe it or not, quite a few owls are active throughout the winter. A good example of this right now would be the great horned owl. They're looking for the perfect place for their nest. So if you hear some extra hooting, it might be them. Speaking of birds, there are quite a few songbirds that are active during the winter as well. Some might not migrate at all, and some might only migrate every few years. A good example of this would be the blue jay and the robin. Even though they do a pretty good job of finding food to eat, if you feel like putting out some bird seed for them, I'm sure they'd appreciate it. Some other birds may enter a state known as torpor. This is best described as sort of a state of mental and physical lethargy. That means everything sort of slows down. Basically, some birds will do this as a means to save energy during times of the year where food is scarce and the weather is pretty bad. It makes sense to do that in the winter because sometimes you can have long stretches of bad weather. But don't forget, you can have some stormy weather too in the summer, and there could be droughts, which may make it very difficult for them to find food. So if you see smaller birds sitting very still and very quiet for a while, it might be that they're in torpor. So you might be wondering, Bucky, what do white-tailed deer do in the winter? Well, I'm glad you asked. White-tailed deer like me often start to clump together in small herds in the winter. Depending on how bad the winter gets, these herds might get pretty big. They may start as just 3 deer, but sometimes they can be up to 10 deer. Or if you're in a region where the weather is particularly harsh in the winter, these herds could number in the hundreds, if not thousands. Why do deers clump together in herds? Well, first of all, there's safety in numbers. Secondly, it actually increases the chance of them finding food to eat, and it helps keep us warm. This fur only does so much. Speaking of fur, you may have noticed that the white-tailed deer's beautiful brown coat of fur has changed its color. In the winter, it tends to be a little grayer, a little duller. Believe it or not, this actually helps the deer camouflage in areas where there's bare trees without any leaves. Alright, wild things, that's just a small example of some of the critters that are active here in western New York State. There are a lot more, and just you wait until February. There'll be a whole nother roster of critters for me to talk to you about. Until then, stay wild!